Now, South Korean investigators have suspended their efforts to arrest impeached President Yoon Suk Yeol for insurrection over his short-lived martial law decree last month. The decision follows a standoff with security services and with hundreds of Yoon's supporters gathered outside his residence in the South Korean capital, vowing to block his arrest. Yoon's lawyers called the arrest warrant invalid and illegal.
Anti-corruption officials gathered at South Korea's presidential compound, planning to arrest impeached leader Yoon Suk Yeol. But after a nearly 6-hour standoff with Yoon's security service, they were forced to leave again. Outnumbered by 200 or so presidential guards and fearing for their safety, they said it was, quote, virtually impossible to carry out the arrest. Yoon is under criminal investigation after his shocking declaration of martial law in early December. He has since been suspended from presidential duties, but is resisting all attempts to question or detain him. Yoon's supporters have been camped outside his compound for days, vowing to block any arrest attempts. Scuffles broke out as police tried to contain the protests on Friday.
We cannot agree with this unjust warrant. If a warrant is issued to detain even a sitting president in such an unjust manner, if such a precedent is set, what laws should normal citizens follow? And what laws can protect us? That is why many people are saying this warrant is unjust.
Anti-corruption officials have yet to reveal their next steps after their failed attempt to arrest Yoon. Their arrest warrant expires on Monday. Protests demanding Yoon's immediate arrest are also taking place in Seoul.
I came rushing out filled with anger over the fact that Yoon Suk Yeol has not been swiftly arrested and that they are resisting and not promptly complying with the arrest.
The divisions adding to South Korea's growing political crisis.
Let's speak to journalist Jen Moon, joining us now from the South Korean capital. We should say that Jen was outside President Yoon's residence when this arrest attempt was made. How volatile is the situation there right now?
Well, as volatile as it can be, even now on this Friday evening, there are pro-Yoon protesters surrounded by anti-Yoon protesters in thousands, braving the freezing temperatures as we speak. The atmosphere in the streets charged now, and it was heavily charged early this morning as well. When I was on site when the arrest attempt was made, motorcades carrying the officials with a detention warrant approached the impeachment president's residence, and hundreds of his supporters who had been camping out overnight erupted in anger. So there were a lot of conflict and clashes, if you will, earlier this morning and continues throughout tonight, although it's peaceful in nature.
And do we have any idea where things go from here? What happens now that this attempt to arrest Yoon has failed?
Right. Well, several potential scenarios. The CIA could attempt to re-execute the arrest before the arrest warrant expires on Monday the 6th. And observers do expect the CIA to make at least one more attempt between now and Monday. The warrant period, of course, which is a week, could technically be extended through a new request if needed. Or legal experts suggest the CIA could bypass further direct confrontations by seeking a pre-trial detention warrant. Now, this would require less immediate physical enforcement, but would maintain the pressure on President Yoon. But the execution of this option, again, will probably face similar challenges if Yoon refuses to comply.
So no easy way ahead. How big of a crisis is this for South Korea? Could you put it in context for us?
Well, you know, the country has been in a political disarray since Yoon declared martial law exactly 1 month ago tonight, which was reversed just 6 hours later, but long enough to spark a fierce backlash from the public and lawmakers across the political spectrum as it revived painful memories of the country's authoritarian past. Since since then, the parliament has voted to impeach not only President Yoon, but also its prime minister and acting president Han Duck-soo. So the finance minister Choi Sang-mok is now acting president with 4 titles under his sleeves: acting president, acting prime minister, finance minister, and chief of investigations on Sunday's Jeju airplane crash, which was the deadliest aviation disaster on South Korean soil.
So amid all of that, with so much going on, the South Koreans you've been speaking to, how have they been reacting to this very public showdown that's happening in the capital?
For many South Koreans, what transpired today is not something that they could have ever imagined can happen in this country, at least not in this century. An arrest attempt of a sitting president, an unyielding president, and a tense standoff between government officials and the president's security details. Not only the public, but the main opposition party and even some within his own ruling party are calling on the impeached president to walk out of his residence and voluntarily and peacefully take part in the investigators' questioning and own up to his actions after. But after what happened today, I mean, it's increasingly clear that that may be less likely, with a defiant president with a 30-year career as a prosecutor argued that the CIO had no authority to investigate the insurrection, called the warrant illegal, and filed a criminal complaint against some local broadcasters and YouTube channel owners for unauthorized filming of the presidential residence.
Jen, it's been great talking to you. Thank you so much for making the time. This is journalist Jen Moon in Seoul.
Authorities in South Korea have been unable to arrest President Yoon Suk Yeol over his short-lived declaration of martial law last month. Officials arrived at the presidential compound in Seoul to execute an arrest warrant, but were blocked by security services inside. Crowds of Yoon supporters gathered outside the compound trying to prevent his arrest. His lawyers have described the warrant as invalid and illegal. He's been suspended from presidential duties and is under criminal investigation for insurrection, but has refused to appear for questioning. And journalist Stephen Borovic is a staff writer with Nikkei Asia. He joins us from the South Korean capital. Welcome, Stephen. Bring us up to date, please.
So as you laid out, investigators attempted to gain access to Yoon's residence in Seoul earlier today, but when they got there, they entered a kind of standoff with Yoon's security detail, who appeared to have prevented them from entering. And then at around 1:30 p.m. local time, they called off the operation. They issued a statement saying that they had deemed it impossible to serve the warrant on this particular day. So it raises the question as to what they might do next, if they're going to carry out a similar or an alternative operation to try to get this warrant to the impeached president. They've given no definitive indication as to what they'll do. They said in this statement that they will kind of think over their options and make an announcement at a later date. But they did say in this statement that they kind of regret, or they think it's unfortunate, that Yoon has decided to resist the mechanisms of the law and is kind of hiding out in this way.
OK, so they're not saying what they will do. Do we have any idea what their likely options are now that they've failed to execute this arrest warrant?
They can only really speculate there, but I could say, I mean, they could try to just do a similar kind of thing again, and they could maybe be. They said that they called this out because of safety reasons, so they didn't specify exactly what that meant, but we have to assume that what that meant was they were facing a pretty kind of concerted resistance from Yoon's security detail. So I mean, I guess they could. The decision they'll have to make is just how aggressive they wish to be and what risks they want to incur on that point. If they want to perhaps attempt to, use more force or be more aggressive, or be, kind of threaten a kind of snowballing legal charges. If they could maybe accuse Yoon of obstructing justice or something to that effect. I would watch what happens in the street also. I mean, we saw what I think was a fairly surprisingly large number of people who came out to the environs of Yoon's place to protect him, and he directly kind of called on his supporters. He said that this arrest warrant was anti-democratic, and it was incumbent on the people of the country to do what they could to impede it. If we see something like that again, I mean, presumably there will not be like a 24-hour ongoing mass gathering outside of his residence like there for the past few days, but we'll see.
All right, thanks for that. So in the last couple of months, South Korea has been through, it looks like 3 presidents and currently has an interim president and a president who's waiting to be impeached. Just talk us through, remind us of the timeline. What happened to set all this off?
So at late at night on December 3rd, Yoon very unexpectedly went on television and announced that he was imposing martial law, and he said that he was doing this because the opposition political parties had paralyzed the nation's functioning, particularly in the National Assembly, and that he felt like he had to do something to restore order. That measure was very unpopular, and lawmakers gathered in the National Assembly later that night to vote down martial law, and Yoon withdrew it the next morning. And ever since then, we've been in this kind of political gridlock. Yoon was impeached on December 14th, and his prime minister was named the acting president. But then about a week later, the opposition voted to impeach him because they said that he was not doing all that he could to restore the constitutional court, which is the judicial body that is going to rule on whether to formally remove Yoon from office or to allow him to remain in office. And so now we've got another acting president, a fellow named Chae Sang-mok, who is currently in office. And it all kinds of depends on where we go from here. If the Constitutional Court is able to bring some finality to this, or if Yoon can be arrested and formally face these charges. But this political crisis is showing every sign of kind of metastasizing and becoming all that much more bitter and resisting a kind of neat conclusion.
Thanks for talking us through that. Journalist Stephen Borovic in Seoul.
Thank you.